SC Media is proud to present this month's CISO Stories program, hosted by yours truly, Jessica Hoffman. This is a show where CISOs share tales from the trenches and unpack leadership lessons learned along the way. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com. The Cyber Risk Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, please visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CRC. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back for another month's episode of CISO Stories Podcast. You got myself, Jess Hoffman, as your MC host for today. We have a fabulous guest, Sandy Dunn, in the house with us. We're talking about AI governance for the month of November. What's up, Sandy? How you doing today?
Hey, Jessica. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Yes, I am loving the look. I know I just told you that, but we gotta get that on official roll. You look fabulous, girl. I thanks so much again for joining us. I've heard great things about you, and I've read some of your articles as well. Rock Lambros was on our show earlier this year for AI governance, and I asked him, since he's like super guru, awesome dude, and he said he didn't even hesitate and said, "Talk to Sandy." So I'm really excited for all the gems you're going to share with the audience. But let's start off with a little bit about your background. I know you've been doing a lot of work in AI space. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
So, long time, I always call myself a seasoned cybersecurity professional. I jumped in before we were even really, we didn't even call it cybersecurity. We just called it security and information security. So, I was with HP for a very long time and then joined Blue Cross of Idaho as their CISO. Then I've been a CISO at a number of different startups. And when ChatGPT first came out, I, like many other people, the first time I used it, I knew the world had changed. And I immediately dug in, joined every group I could possibly join to understand, lengthy research papers, trying to understand what just happened. And as a CISO, how do I prepare my organization for it?
I love that. What just happened? That should be the name of everything. What just happened to our way of life here? It's completely different. So yeah, let's get into that. You recently wrote an article, Attack, the MITRE ATT&CK framework version 18 plus Atlas. I think that the version 18 dropped early last month. We're going to talk a little bit about that because I think it's really interesting, and I think our listeners can really take away some gems that they can further implement into response of what just happened, right? But let's level set. Could you just give a moment or so and explain what the MITRE ATT&CK and Atlas frameworks are?
So the MITRE ATT&CK is really how attackers, the chain of events that happen, the techniques, tactics, and procedures that they use to actually breach your organization. And so why it's important, now Atlas, which is focused more on artificial intelligence, now those two frameworks work together. Because keep in mind that even if you're attacking a model, chances are you're still using traditional cybersecurity methods like phishing or credential stealing, looking for gaps in configurations to be able to get into an organization. So now they're using kind of the same wording. They're cross-referencing each other so that those two different frameworks, you can take a holistic view. Because as much as we talk about AI security, it's not in isolation. You're still using laptops. You're still using mobile phones. AI is on your traditional network, so you have to still do the traditional things that we've always been trying to do to protect our organization. Identity, access, patching for vulnerabilities, supply chain.
Of course, that's my favorite these days, supply chain. I'm glad you said that. As far as AI being a game changer, yes, being another tool, another tech, a very complex, extensive tech, absolutely. But the way that we're still being, we're all still human first and foremost. We're all still using laptops. We're all still accessing networks, hopefully in a secure way, VPN, MFA, just in time, zero trust, all that stuff, right? Um, so what do you think has changed in the MITRE ATT&CK version 18 framework and that framework, and why does pairing it with the Atlas matter so much when it comes to? I mean, you mentioned some of that, but why do you think really it matters so much that from an AI governance as it is today, or even in the future?
Well, the big change that MITRE made that was significant was they really take the incidents, or the events that happen, and instead of looking at them in isolation, they're looking for the patterns. So now you're able to more realistically, or better, you're able to better kind of analyze, okay, what's happening, where's the gaps in my network. And then keep in mind, MITRE has so many awesome tools, but pair it with like their defend framework, so you can look, you can, if you see there's a specific type of malware that's exploiting your industry, you can map and look at what techniques they use, and then cross-reference it with the defend framework and make sure that you have controls, and you're able, I mean, first and foremost, you want to be able to identify the behavior. So what are your logs telling you? Can I catch this? If this type of activity was happening within my organization, would we know that it's there? And then two, cross-reference it with your defend framework to verify that you have all of the effective controls in place, and not a single control, multi-layered controls.
That's a good segue into my next question, like the minimum viable controls that you would need for AI governance. You just mentioned logging, and we a couple others too. But what do you think are the minimum viable controls, really, that from, and maybe what you've done as the CISO as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that one of the things that I really encourage people to do is break all of this down into bite-sized chunks, so that you're not trying to boil the ocean. The number one thing that every CISO needs to do is look at their defenses. Google just published their AI threat report, or their threat report, and they talk about the dual use. And our adversaries right now, because they have the ability to be more agile, and they don't have to go through legal, and they don't have to sign contracts, and they don't have to, they're able to actually take advantage of the benefits of using these AI tools to accelerate their attacks. So number one, just recognize that the number one thing that's changed is the acceleration of speed. If you're going to have to be, you no longer can wait to patch, or go through a long process. You have to be able to move at the speed of our adversaries. So that's, first and foremost, look at your organization. Think about it from a disaster scenario. What's our absolute worst day? What's the worst thing that I have to make sure does not happen? And then look at your controls. Can I see it? Could I see this activity? Do I have controls in place? Could we recover from it? So look at your defenses first. Can I defend against an AI enabled adversary? And then start looking internally. You have a lot of AI already within your organization. How are you managing that? What are the contracts? Are they capturing any data? A lot of the products, Slack, Notion, New Relic, they've added AI functionality in their products in the last couple of years. When was they probably didn't have that when you did your third party assessment. So go back through and make sure that you have all of the right language and you're evaluating your third party partners. Then start thinking about the new initiatives. How can you use AI within your organization? Because I absolutely believe that every organization they will absolutely need to use all of these tools to be able to defend at the same speed as our adversaries or even your competitors. It's now you have to all of those things that digital transformation that we've been begging people to do. Where's your data? Who has access to it? What are how agile are you? How can you patch? We talk about non-human identities with agentics, but there's a lot of non-human identities. If you're using Docker or Kubernetes, if you're using these services, you have non-human identities within your organization. How are you managing those? Do you have a business owner? Do you have a technology owner? Is there a life cycle for the non-human identities?
Girl, you just said a whole bunch there. I love it. I love it. You just talked about, I think, for years we've always talked about best practices, but it's almost like, you said about the speed, that's like, it's definitely not enough anymore, right? But we need those foundational bedrocks, like you said, inventory patching, access management, non-human, human identities. How are we managing them? So account management. You mentioned about the third party. I'm actually dealing with something similar now, like going back because you're right. We weren't necessarily, especially for these companies who have extensive, legal processes, contract processes, government, we didn't talk about AI built in or machine learning for that matter, although we know it's been around for a while, but now it is a game changer. So like going back and reevaluating your vendors and getting to drawing a conclusion and agreement between the both of you, like, hey, you're gonna put out any new AI back end code, or we need to talk about it. I think at least at first we need to have those conversations, and then always in defend mode. I love that. But let me ask you a question. You mentioned about always in defend mode. What's your worst day look like? So, what's your worst day look like as a CISO when you're talking about being able to defend against AI adversaries? What can you share with us?
Yeah, I think ransomware is still the thing that as a CISO is the one that keeps us all worried. Having someone come into your organization, and that's the ransomware incidents are so complex. Trying to recover from those, to me, I think that's for me that's still the number one thing that that keeps me awake at night.
How do you think AI has changed that?
Well, in the
Have it
Google report, they just talked about LLM enabled malware. So, and I certainly saw some demos at DEF CON where people were able to compromise some systems incredibly quickly with a power cable. They plugged in a power cable to a Mac that went back and to a C2 server and completely took over that system. So it, the capabilities are um, very concerning. And you think about it, Jessica. Any, all of the data that's out on every one of us. I mean, we all want to believe that we're immune to phishing attacks, but if someone knows everything about you, they know they can go out and do some great big search and they have a complete profile on you. Those get to be incredibly difficult to even defend yourself as an individual.
Absolutely. Good old DEF CON. They're always good for scaring the crap out of us, right? I mean, it's too easy. These things are too easy.
Well,
Really.
and I will say that's why I'm such a strong advocate for OWASP, because you think about it, the way that we will be able to defend ourselves is by working together. Instead of working in isolation, as we group together to defend against our adversaries. OWASP is the only organization that is worldwide. We serve standard bodies in the UK, Korea, Japan, Australia, the United States. I always say we're non-denominational. We it's all about good security. It started out with web app security and mobile, but now we do the supply chain. Um, so there's so many great resources. It's all volunteer. Anyone can stand up a project and start working on it. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. I can tell you, it's fun to have an idea that you think is will make a difference, and then being able to take it to a group and get collaboration on it, and then and just see so many people appreciate what you've been able to give them. So I encourage everybody, whether it's OWASP, whether it's B-sides. I mean, I think as cybersecurity professionals, find where you can kind of jump in and help make a difference.
Yeah, thank you for that. I completely agree. B-Sides is one of my favorite, was my favorite community. OWASP has been in my life since I started my cyber career. So to see the evolution there. So you are on the board, right, for the top 10 LLMs, right?
I
What's
am.
that like? What's that like?
It's we're almost a victim of our own success. We have so many people interested in being part of the project and spinning up new ideas. We started out with just the OWASP top 10 for LLM, which is we're about to kick off our third iteration of that.
Wow, that's
But now
crazy.
we have red teaming, we have threat intelligence, we have deep fake guidance. Of course, we have the checklist that I wrote that's due for an update. I just released Compass. I'm kicking off the planning for the update for that in January. So yes, I mean we really have so. Even as a person who's deeply involved with it, I can't hardly keep track of everything that we're doing.
That's all really exciting. Third iteration. I mean, it hasn't even been out that long.
Yep.
Just to reiterate the speed of how this is going. Let's talk about your checklist, though. I'll make sure to put the links in our write up for this show, for your article on the attack framework and Atlas, as well as you have a 2025 Gen AI logging checklist. What's that about? Who should use it?
Oh, that so I've created a lot of different checklists. Updating your incident response. Those are all on my GitHub. That's not connected to OWASP. That's just stuff that I share. But it was a cheat sheet. Like what I find, all of us are overwhelmed with information. And we see just, pages and pages of guidance. And what I've really tried to do is create tools that people can use. Like instead of just saying, hey, create an AI board and then drop the mic and walk away, I say, okay, well, how would I do that? What are the steps to do that? So with the generative AI logging, it's just a checklist. If you have generative AI applications within your organization, these are all the things that you should be logging. So go check it out. I kept it simple. I try to keep things simple and useful.
We like simple and useful. So yeah, you have two sections in this one that I just mentioned, the Gen AI, user interaction and model behavior is one section, and security modeling. Now, would somebody use this checklist for like agentic AI applications that are built in-house or used internally, or like could I use it for Microsoft,
Absolutely.
Copilot?
Yeah. No, yeah. Anything, it's just all of the things that you should think about logging if you have LLM applications. Now, agentic is an interesting, if you think about agentic, uh, it still comes down to access. What are they doing? How would I know what they did? Who did it? And how do I know what they did? So it's really, agentic, even though it sounds really complex, there are still things, and of course I'm oversimplifying a little bit because there's multiple handoffs and things, but just break it down, kind of remove the AI piece out of it and just think about, who, who, what is this? Who did it? Can I trust it? And should they be doing it? And then, if you have concerns, I mean, keep in mind, logging is, the whole reason that we log is to identify anomalies and things that unusual behavior, so we can get in front of it quickly.
You just made me think of something. This is the off question, but from like the zero trust architecture, like trust but verify, trust no one kind of thing. Do you think that changes at all when we're talking about LLM security or dealing with these third party generate powered AI apps, or would it pretty much be the same?
Well, I always say, treat AI like a drunk intern. like, you don't trust it. I mean, I don't know, anyone who's went out and used ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, any of them, we all know that they can be, one, any kind of an update or change, all of the prompts that you used in the past aren't as effective. And two, so you'll ask it to do something, and one time you'll use it and you're like, oh my gosh, you read my mind. This was incredible. Now, again, we all know that prompting is, there's a lot that goes into actually prompting to get the response that you want. But then, later I'll use this exact same prompt and I'll get a terrible answer. So, I do want to highlight that this is frontier technology. The other thing about LLMs, it really is based on language. It's not, it wasn't necessarily developed to be great at math. And so use the right tool for the job. There, again, report writing, sentiment analysis, there are so many things it's unbelievable at. But there's other things that, it's cheaper to use a Python library than it is to send it to an LLM. So just, kind of pull back from the hype and use that critical thinking skill that's so important, to say, okay, ultimately, and Jessica, you and I talked about it, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the human on each end of the communication. And so how can we help our organizations build resources and tools so that they're delivering on their business outcomes, in the most effective way possible, giving people the ability. Now, there's a lot of things that humans do that LLMs can never do. They don't understand empathy. They don't understand unusual circumstances. We've seen that in driving driverless cars. That's why we see the accidents anytime it's unusual. And that's where we as humans, we're three-dimensional. We can sense that, we can understand when something's unusual. Or maybe this is, this person shouldn't do this, but here's an exception because it's an unusual circumstance. So don't hand your thinking off to an AI. Make sure that you're still the human that's managing all of these tools.
Yeah, we got to hang out, man. Drunk intern. There's got to be a story behind that. And critical thinking, I believe, is kind of getting to be a lost art with these young people. So, but I love what you just said right there. Because, maybe they could, maybe far, far away, maybe not so far in the future, like the vibe check, us as humans, we can like enter a room and like check the energy, right? And we have intuition. So thanks for bringing that up because I think sometimes we do lose sight of that because we're just so excited about having like this tech at our fingertips, right? Encyclopedia Britannica is long, long since gone, but I mean Google, as we knew it a few years ago, 5 years ago, that we depended on has completely changed as well, right? We're like so surpassed that even. So I think it's really cool our generation to be able to really see this evolution. We do have a couple minutes left, but you mentioned, and I was wondering if you could just describe or explain what Compass is, because I think that might be something that our listeners would really enjoy as well.
Yeah. So again, for both of the projects I've led for OWASP, I really created the tools that I wanted that I couldn't find. And so what Compass does is it takes all of our red teaming guidance, it takes all of the incident, the deep fake, all of that, and it gives you. It's really a methodology to say, okay, how do I start building a strategy around AI and cybersecurity, so that because we know the business wants to bring it in. I'll give you an example. Data loss protection. That's one of the areas that people have been the most fearful of. But you think about it, if you're using an enterprise license and you have a contract in place with OpenAI or Microsoft, that's the same as the contract you have with AWS and all of these other different places. So data loss is probably not the biggest threat that you're facing. Start thinking, think, really try to identify what is that worst day for you, and how do you make sure that you're in front of it. We always talk about threat modeling, and I've been talking about threat modeling for at least 16 years, but it's very complex. It takes a unique skill set to be able to do it. People get arguing down in the weeds about it. So the threat modeling system I came up with was between 1 and 5, because anytime someone from application security or from the SOC came to my desk, kind of with a little bit of sweat on their brow, looking concerned, telling me about something, my first question was, is this a 1 alarm fire or a 5 alarm? Like, how panicked do I need to be? And so again, it's based on the OODA loop. So observe, orient, detect, decide, and act. Do that continuously. And the whole reason is understand, where are you now? And that's why the name Compass, it's helping you navigate. Like, where am I now? Where do I, what is the problem in front of me? And how do I prioritize? How do I get in front of this?
That's beautiful. We're gonna be good friends. We gonna get together. Where you at again? You're in Colorado?
Idaho.
Idaho. Oh man. I don't know if I'm getting to Idaho, but if I do, I'm looking you up. We'll have to meet up
Okay.
in Vegas or something. This has all been so great. It would take me 2 minutes to summarize all the gems you just dropped. I will make sure to put all the links in the description for this podcast so our listeners can further read up on all the great work that you're doing and that you're into. But my last question I like to ask all of my guests, Sandy, is what would Sandy done today if you could? What advice would you give 18-year-old Sandy?
Oh gosh, that's you should have started. You should have prepped me for that one. I think I think I would tell me, just enjoy every day, because it's this is really fun.
I love that. Short, sweet, relevant, positive. Enjoy every day because it really is fun. And cyber is so fun. And we get to meet cool people and do cool stuff like you are. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. It sounds like you are so uber busy, but doing things that are game changers and we're all benefiting from. So, really, from everybody, just want to say thank you. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you, Jessica. I enjoyed being on your podcast.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks everybody for checking in as well. Make sure you check out Sandy Dunn. She's amazing, and I'm sure a lot more fantastic, wonderful things to come. And we will check you out next time on CISO Stories Podcast. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories Podcast. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories Podcast and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode. Thanks for joining.